Hello, dear compatriots. The Joint Information Center is continuing its work. Let me update you on the situation. During the entire day, the military activities continued along the entire contact line, but not at a high intensity. In the southern part, from Berdor until the coast of Arak, there were certain military activities. Our armed forces managed to improve their positions. We will now see all of it on the map. Apart from that, as we had already mentioned before, in the villages of Martuni and Askeran regions, mostly in the forested parts, we're continuing to our military operations against diversion groups. Today, these actions were around Avetaranot and Srnakh villages and adjacent forests. The military groups were trying to infiltrate in different directions, and combating them presupposes a different type of activity, which is not like the fifth generation military activities. This is the general situation. During the day, in different settlements of Artsakh, shelling continued in different settlements of Artsakh, and mostly artillery and missiles were used. In general, this is the general situation on the front line. And you already saw the map, and before going on, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Anna, and after that we have a guest. Thank you. I will try to talk about the recent developments in the diplomatic front line, although I know that you're following the latest news. A couple of days ago, when our foreign minister was having a visit to the US, we achieved an agreement about ceasefire on the third agreement on ceasefire, the first one on the 5th of October and second one on the 10th of October. But as in the previous cases, this time Azerbaijan was again unable to commit to the ceasefire and continued the aggression. It's been more than a month now that Azerbaijan is continuing its full-scale aggression against the population of Artsakh, especially targeting the peaceful population, civil settlements, and humanitarian infrastructures. Today, the Foreign Ministry made a statement about this, especially condemning the targeting of medical institutions and hospitals under the pandemic circumstances. It is noteworthy that as a result of the Azerbaijani aggression against Artsakh, the population of Artsakh has suffered significant losses. We have more than 40 deaths in the peaceful population and more than 120 injured people, a lot of them heavy injuries. We also have data about destruction of civil infrastructures, about more than 10,000 infrastructures, not to mention about 12,000 pieces of personal property, and a lot of infrastructures, most of which are very important ones. However, we have already mentioned in our statement that these activities of Azerbaijan that contain elements of crimes against humanity have been opposed to by the Artsakh population and the Defense Army. And now let me speak about the most urgent topic today, This is about the forthcoming meeting in Geneva. On the 30th of October, Foreign Minister Armenia will be in Geneva on an unofficial visit where he will have a meeting with the OSCE Minsk group. And as we speak, our Foreign Minister is having a meeting with the Deputy Foreign Minister of Iran. I will be able to provide additional details about this meeting only after the meeting. As we have mentioned more than once, in our heroic fight, a lot of our brave soldiers are continuing their heroic fight. And today we have a guest, student of the Department of History of the Yerevan State University, Mikayel Mikayelyan, who was fighting on the front line, was a voluntary fighter in the front line, and has come back for a short period of time. And now I would like to give the floor to Mikayel. Thank you. Dear compatriots, it's been more than a month that the Armenian nation is fighting against Turkish Azerbaijani terrorist groups. A month ago, on the 20th of September, I enlisted in the army and participated in the military action on the southern part of Artsakh. This is a cruel war, but our defense army is fighting bravely. As a historian, I do realize how tragic it could be if the Armenians did not rise against the army. We have a question. Why did the genocide of 1915 happen? Everyone is asking what the reason was. The only reason was that we did not have a state, we did not have an army. And Turkey, headed by Talat Pasha, managed to organize the genocide of the Armenian nations. A century later, Turkish terrorists are again encroaching against our nation. But today, we do have an army, we do have a state, and we have a powerful Armenian diaspora, and we are going to prevail. We will not allow Turkey to reach the dream of Talat Pasha to leave only one Armenian in a museum. Dear compatriots, I would like to call on all of you to take up weapons and to participate in the sacred mission of protecting our country. We have to finish the war that our fathers started in the 90s. We are not going to leave this war to the next generation. There is no other way. We are going to win. And I assure you that on the front line, the Armenian soldiers does not have any problems. We don't have food or weapons problems, and we are going to defeat the army in their own homes. We will not allow them to reach the borders of our country. I assure you and I swear that we shall win. Thank you. Dear Mikayel, after this speech, it's difficult to add anything else. Dear compatriots, even though the intensity of the military actions has decreased a little bit, but the problem we face is still there. Our adversary, together with terrorist groups and with full support of Turkey, is continuing the war, following a different scenario, with different weaponry. But we have the same task at hand. We have to protect our sacred homeland. And now let's pass on to the questions. Are there questions in the hall? We have a question from Armenian Press to Anna Naghdalyan. Today, we're facing decision of ceasefire with Azerbaijan, but the intensity of fire does not stop on the front line. Under the circumstances, this meeting in Geneva how realistic is the meeting in Geneva on the 30th of October? It was initially planned for 20th of October. Why did the date change, and what is the agenda of the meeting? I already mentioned in my opening speech that tomorrow, on the 30th of October, our foreign minister will be in Geneva on a working meeting where he will meet with the co-chairs of the Minsk group. This is the only information that I have about the format of the meeting. As for the question regarding the change of date, the change is explained by some logistic issues. As for the agenda, we have mentioned more than once that for us, a ceasefire is the most important thing, according to the agreement achieved on the 10th of October. The decision of ceasefire and appropriate verification of this is the most important for us, and this will be the main topic on the agenda during the Geneva meeting. Another question from Armenian Press. On the 1st of October, Armenia decided to call back the ambassador to Israel. What is the position of Armenia regarding Israel selling weaponry to Azerbaijan, and what are the further actions planned after calling back the ambassador? At the moment, the ambassador is still in Armenia. As for the position of Armenia about Israel selling weapons to Azerbaijan, this is quite clear, and it is not regarding one or two countries. This is a clear position that a country that uses weaponry against peaceful civil population should not receive weapons from any country. One more question about Arminfo. Aliyev wrote in his Twitter microblog that we see the future of Karabakh as a peaceful area, and with our experience of rehabilitation, we can turn this area into one of the most prosperous areas in the world, but we have to remove the results of the war for this. How can you comment on this? Well, just like the previous statements of the President of Azerbaijan and the actions of the military forces of Azerbaijan show that the aim of Azerbaijan is to remove all Armenians from Artsakh, and Azerbaijan wants Artsakh without the Armenian population. The existence of the Armenian population in Artsakh is impossible with Azerbaijani jurisdiction there. Ever since day one, Azerbaijan has continuously violated international humanitarian laws. And this is Azerbaijan has continuously targeted peaceful civilian populations, and even under the circumstances of the pandemic, they have targeted important medical institutions and hospitals. The shelling was done mainly with internationally prohibited weaponry and ammunition, the main objective of which is to inflict heavy losses on peaceful population, women and children. This is a blatant violation of Geneva Convention. We've also seen this in Hadrut area, where Azerbaijani armed forces have murdered prisoners of war, peaceful prisoners of war. And they have even disseminated videos of these atrocities in social media and have become literally the pride of the Azerbaijani population. The Azerbaijani armed forces are also destroying all the infrastructures in the area that is under their control, thereby trying to prohibit the further return of the peaceful population to their homes. I'd like to note that adhering to laws of military actions, especially respect towards peaceful population, is what differentiates an army from terrorist groups. By violating these laws and the international humanitarian law, and by promoting these military crimes and making them a matter of pride in their nation, the authorities of Azerbaijan should bear responsibility for long-term and short-term consequences of these actions. Question from Sputnik Armenia. We've had information that Israel has proposed humanitarian aid to Armenia. What is your position on this? Well, we find it critical that Israel should stop, first of all, selling weapons to Azerbaijan and enhancing their military capacity that is used against peaceful population. This is proved by the actions yesterday when these weapons were used against capital of Republic of Artsakh. And under the circumstances, we have a situation where a nation that survived a genocide is actually supporting a state that is trying to implement genocide. Another question from public television. Does Armenia have any expectations from Iran, especially regarding new military units alongside the river of Arax and military actions in this part? And what are the proposals the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iran are making, and what is their position about the suggestions that were made in Baku? As I've already mentioned, our Foreign Minister is currently having a meeting with the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iran, and I wouldn't like to comment on this based on any information received from the press, and therefore I cannot give you any information about this meeting till the end of the meeting. Regarding the first part of the question, Iran is a neighboring country, and this aggression against Artsakh with the support of imported weapons, as well as Azerbaijan becoming a center of Turkish influence, is a threat for the entire region, and Iran is not an exception. Any other questions? No more questions. Thank you. Even though the question was addressed to Anna Naghdalyan, let me make a small addition regarding making Artsakh prosperous. Let Aliyev first make his own country prosperous and then think about the rest of the world. Now, further questions. Armen Press Agency. The U.S. Embassy has requested the citizens of Armenia, of the U.S., to avoid visiting some of the regions of Armenia. And this list includes regions, marzes, that are neighboring Azerbaijan but not Artsakh. Well, I do not know why exactly the U.S. Embassy has made this statement. I can assume that they're just concerned about the safety and security of their citizens. just as in the previous statement when they had warned them against terroristic actions. Azadutun radio station. The president of Artsakh said that Azerbaijani forces are 5 kilometers away from Shushi, and can you tell us what exactly this means? I mentioned in my speech that it was about Sığnaq village and neighboring villages. It may be 7 kilometers, not 5, but that's approximately that. Another question about the US Embassy. Literally same question from 168 hours. Vyaztor, Ararat, and Syunik Marzes, Dilijan National Park, etc. Do not visit the area in the south of the Lake of Sevan. What is the situation there? Do we have any accumulation of military forces of the adversary? We have accumulations of military forces along the entire borderline with Azerbaijan, but the situation is quiet there. This is all I can say. Another question about the president of Artsakh. Dear compatriots, let me make an addition and a comment on the statement of the president of Artsakh. The president of Artsakh called everyone to action, and this is normal. Under the circumstances, the head of the country and the head of the military forces can make these sort of statements every day because the war is continuing. The intensity is different. The main part of the armed forces have been sent back, but small diversion groups are continuing their actions, especially taking into account the terrain of Karabakh. And if we're not especially mentioning about the diversion actions in different directions, it doesn't mean that they're not happening. But this particular direction that the president mentioned, it's obvious that this is the parameter of the villages leading to Shushi, and this is why it's important. But military actions are continuing everywhere and every day. Another question on the US Embassy. And finally, another question about the president of Artsakh. So essentially, these were the two main questions repeated across the agencies. This is it, I guess. This much for today. Keep following our center. We work almost 24 hours a day, and we can give you all the information about the war. This is not easy, but we shall prevail and we shall win.